Hello and welcome to this our conversation about the final tool that we haven't talked about yet in this series of waking up, which we're calling Waking Up the Tools Chats. I'm here with my friend and colleague Andrew Moss, and we're gonna talk about the one last tool that it's funny because it was the first one that I remember learning. It's like the first one that I remember learning. And here we are talking about it last in this series, which we've been doing all year.
Nice
Welcome,
to see
Andrew.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
nice to
you.
see you too. Um, hmm. Do you remember what it is?
I do because the last time you gave me a choice of which of the final two. So this is more periods, less commas.
Mm. Periods, not commas. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And I'm going to read what I wrote about it in the book, but I would be curious
Mm.
because you said when we talked last, uh, you said something about the origin of this tool for you. So let's start with that. Can we start with that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I actually got a friend of mine, and I think a friend of yours a little bit, Eric Grunde from One Solution, which is an organization that's been helping teach actually some of the foundational pieces of what we've been talking about. They
Mm,
teach that in inner city Chicago to youth, who then go on to teach it to other youth. And but Eric and I were at an event with one of the Rebels for Peace from Chicago, Dejan, and we were doing a corporate retreat in upstate New York with a restaurant chain. And so the CEO had done some work with One Solution, more from a coaching perspective, and thought it could help his company. So he brought a bunch of their senior managers and their restaurant people together and rented a nice big home in upstate New York. It was beautiful in the fall. And we spent about 3 days together. And one of the sessions we did was based on this notion of commas or periods, not commas. And the idea was in their environment, I'll tell the origin story as we presented it, but
mm,
was that in their environment, there's a lot going on in a restaurant between the how the customers are interacting with the staff, to how the staff are interacting with each other, the staff back to the kitchen, how the kitchen's performing. All of that is happening, under oftentimes fairly high pressure situation. If you've ever watched any of the kitchen shows on TV, you'll get a
mm,
sense of that. Um, but the point we were getting across, and it wasn't just about life in the restaurant, it was also asking them to reflect on this at home and in their day-to-day life, was that our lives are just a series of things that are happening. Like there's a series of events that happen in our day, some of which we instigate, and most of which are instigated by other people or outside sources. And those events, if we describe them, they end with a period. If you
mm,
describe the event, it ends with a period. And what we add to that is what causes our response to it, or our reaction to it, or our emotion about it. And so the notion was, if you just focus on what comes before the period, then you're not adding a whole story about it. And I remember some of the examples in the session we did. Like a customer, isn't happy with something, right? Well, that's a fact. If you could say, this customer was not happy with the cook of their steak, period,
mm,
then it's pretty obvious what you would do with it, right? If you're the waiter, you would do your job, you'd take it back to the kitchen, you would explain and the kitchen could make an adjustment. But what often happens is we say, well, this customer is not happy with the cook of their steak. They're a pain in the ass, right?
I'm so
And
mad about that. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, like how dare they like question the quality of our, like whatever you could add to that initial statement is the part that creates our response, our emotional attachment to it. And it engages us in something that really beforehand was just something that was a fact that had a period attached to it.
Mm.
And so this idea came up, this concept of, periods, not commas, because the period is the part that is just factual. It's like all day long, there are a series of things going on around us that are just facts. And how we respond to it, how others respond to it is only based on how we interpret it and the story that we add to that fact. And which is what would come after the comma, to use the grammatical terms. So that was the notion, is to go through your day and notice the facts, the events, the things that are going on, and see how many times you're adding a story or your own interpretation to that event. And it was really interesting because I think we introduced that maybe on the first or early on the second day of the workshop we did with them, and then asked them to just think about that, just notice for themselves as they spend the next couple of days, at this beautiful in this beautiful setting. We encourage them to go for walks and think about it. It was a very unusual workshop because we would teach for a very short amount of time and then send them off on walks and encourage them to just really allow what we had talked about to settle in and to reflect on it. And it turned out to be one of the most profound ideas for that group, that they could see how much of their own suffering that they were causing by adding commentary to everything. And as they sort of scanned their professional life and personal life, like it was everywhere, as it always is, right? When you come up with when you meet somebody on something, it usually shows up in lots of different places. So I've always thought this was a really interesting one. It's not, there's nothing necessarily profound about it, but it's something when you notice it in how you go through your life, you can see how much of call it suffering or call it, emotion that you're feeling through your life is based on the script or the story that you're adding to the events that could have otherwise just happened and not had you engage with them in that way.
It's so interesting when you talk about, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. Like, what a great description of the tool and how fun that must have been to see the light, dawning for people who are opening to that idea.
I should have said too, and having Dejan there, and just for the audience, some context. So Dejan at that time, I think, was about 20, 20-year-old. One of his first flights, I think, out of, I think it was his first time to New York, out of Chicago. Grew up in a very, very difficult situation in Chicago, in a high crime, high violence area of the city, but was the person that first stepped up when Eric and Mara presented the idea of creating an organization to help youth learn how to have a different experience of their life, even if the events necessarily weren't going to change, that they could experience it differently, that they had this superpower in them. And Dejan was the one who stepped up and said, I want to do this. I want to lead this. I want to be part of this. And I will find other people. And he's continued to have his own journey because, the that those events don't change. We were talking about this before we started recording, right? The events don't change, but access to tools to help yourself navigate those events
Mm-hmm.
can change your experience dramatically. And so what was interesting at that workshop with the restaurant folks is like Dijon doesn't say a lot until he has something to say. When he has something to say, you're well advised to listen because, you know, the events around him are always happening and there's always energy about them. And his ability to learn this concept, this tool, and then apply it to his life, like most of the people watching this video will have nowhere close to the kind of intense activity going on around us
Sort of daily. Yeah.
daily, and not just annoying, but like threatening and, really difficult.
Mm.
And yet his way of describing it is, this allows me to be okay even when things are not okay.
Mm.
Like that's the standard, right? Like I'm surviving, I'm seeing what's going on, recognizing it's not good, but I'm okay.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
and that was sort of the threshold to live in. And so it's really important that like this is not just sort of a nice to have thing to navigate, the idle, the simple things in life. This could be a really powerful tool for some of the most difficult situations. And this is embedded within work that other organizations do in the prison system
Mm.
to help inmates, understand their own selves and how they experience life. So as simple as the phrase sounds, it's extraordinarily powerful when you learn how to just apply this to your day-to-day life.
Mm. I'm thinking about recently I started working with a new client, and what got me thinking about it was when you said about the sort of constant threats and suffering, and how just what an order of magnitude that is beyond what a lot of people experience, right? A lot of people watching and listening perhaps experience. And at the same time, we can feel so like we really are experiencing a horrific level of awfulness, right?
Yeah.
And this person learning about this tool and then practicing it, like we hadn't, it was before we started a formal sort of working together time. And one of the reasons that they wanted to continue working was because that was incredibly transformational for them. That like, wait a minute, I can put a period on that and I don't have to deal with all the garbage that comes after it. Like, wow. And so quite transformational for them as it had been for me. And I think it might be useful to bring up something rather than go back to what's in the book. There's a poem that I would like to read, or a piece that I'd like to read a little bit later, because I think, yeah, anyway, I'll just say that. I think I'd love to contribute that to the conversation, and we can talk about it a little bit. But before we get there, um, something really present for me now is so we've just moved. I live in this incredible home on a beautiful piece of property. I've sort of always wanted it, and to have it, we've been talking in our sort of among peers about integration, like how we can sort of set out on a transformational journey, which it's funny because I would not have thought of this as a transformational journey. I just wanted to move house, right? But it was so transformative. And now to be integrating my lived experience into this me that I've grown into has been really interesting. And one of the ways is I want to talk about this mindfully. So a loved one of mine who does not look like me and is a very close loved one had an experience a week or two ago that had them, and they're okay, which is really good. Now they need to carry some sort of identification that they are in fact an American citizen because of the way they look.
Mhm.
And period, right? Period. And what I did with that was just caused myself so much suffering. Because I couldn't align it for a while with like the okayness of me getting what I want when here's this a terrible thing has happened to this person and now they're, they're living the way that they're living. And I really sort of climbed down into the well with them so, instead of trying to cast a rope, right? And help them out. And so last night I taught the first in a series, a workshop that I'm teaching called Transforming Systems. And the other way that I think of it is how to change a system you don't like. And part of the workshop was, what are some systems that you've changed in the past that you didn't like, and that you successfully changed? And like, what was the journey of that? And then last night's was really about envisioning what you'd like to be different. And I kind of realized somewhere along the way that as the host of the workshop, that doesn't, I think the best way for me to be a good host is to also be practicing this skill of envisioning something and employing what we will be doing in the workshop to change a system, right? So I sort of was curious about what is a system that I would like to change. And I realized that it was this system, this shitty system that has some people able to go about their daily life without worrying about um, being accosted and called upon to justify their right to be here, kind of a thing. And boy, did that feel audacious. Like it felt real. I was like, oh my God, is this a system? Like that's a huge system. How does one person, like I could hear all these things in my head. And when I just got back to the question of what would I like to be different? Like what would I like to change? What's the vision of the new system that I would like to have in place? It was such a simple in fact, I'll read it. Such a simple with a period on the end. And it was so nice to land there, you know what I mean? So what I said was, the system that I would like to see in place is that everyone has a right to be here, and uh, everyone knows and feels that everyone has the right to be here. Like you don't have to justify it. So so just to read yes, everyone has a right to be here, and that's 100% honored in our society, period. And boy, there could be some serious commas. Like, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of commas around that issue in your country right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting because knowing that you were born in Canada, uh, it's not even something that crosses my mind when I walk through our very diverse country of whether that person is a citizen or not. I'm curious about, uh, people's origin stories. Like on the weekend, we were up at the cottage, and my nephew brought along one of his new friends, and his friend had moved with his family from Sudan from Africa about a year ago to the same school that my nephew goes to, and they had become good friends, and so his friend sat down with the whole family, all the my nephew's family and my side, and had dinner, and I kind of felt for him because there's so much curiosity about where he's from, and how he ended up in Canada and what the backstory is, and all that. But there was a sense that like this is who we are. This is our country. This is like we're made up of people like this young man who was brilliant and so well spoken and so understanding of why his family made the decisions they did. And I was noticing in that conversation, the sort of like generational difference where there was maybe some more commas with the older generation, whereas the younger generation, it was just like exchanging facts with each other, right? Like, where did you learn to speak such perfect English? Like, well, I went to this school that my parents sent me to this school that was for students that wanted to have like bilingual, education. And so, period, right? And then, and it can be natural curiosity to keep going down that route, or it can be, oh, that's right. Like, that's just interesting, right? It's just, fascinating, and then move on. But yeah, I think, we won't get into the politics of your side of what you're envisioning, but what's interesting about it, and with any of these sort of highly energized topics, is to get to the root. And I think it's the direction you're trying to go to, is what is the root of the change that we want to see, right? And I find it interesting, the angle you've gone down, because you could take another angle that everybody should be treated equally. Whether, yours is like everybody's welcome, and that would be like, that's an approach where anybody that wants to come is welcome to come, and we're all treated. Or those that are, everybody that is here is treated equally. So there's every chance that Kay gets pulled over driving her new red Jeep, proving that she is supposed to be in this, in this country, in this red Jeep. Then there is, somebody who looks different. It's either way, it's about making it not an emotional thing and not a whole series of commas, which unfortunately is, doesn't sell on TV and doesn't, get people polarized. So it's not the way the news likes to broadcast these things. But if you could get to the heart of any of these system changes or anything that you want to see different in the world and understand what is the root of it, there's a lot of power there. Yeah.
Yeah. As an immigrant myself, right? I have a, I don't know, I guess a different experience than others. I mean, I remember becoming an American when I gained my citizenship here when I was 30. And I happened, it was so fun. I was sworn in Faneuil Hall in Boston. And our 6-week-old son sat with my husband in a celebration audience area of Faneuil Hall, while those of us who were being sworn in were being celebrated. And there were people around me who'd come from terrible situations where they lived, and they were crying with joy about becoming right. And those are experiences that not someone who's born here doesn't have, for example, but I think just to your point about I feel like it's the opposite of everyone, an equal chance for everyone to get pulled over. And more about a peaceful existence where everyone feels secure in who's around us and trusts that everyone here is a good person. And to me, I don't know if that sounds different than what I was getting at before.
Yeah, I think it could sound different. Yeah. Yeah. But I understand the intent. And, and we're not, this is not the conversation to try to figure out what the solution to getting to that point is. But I think what I like about the direction that you're going with that exercise is to try to simplify it down to the most basic root with a period, because you could add a lot of so that endings to a statement that then really do create the sort of energy and divisive nature of it. And And it doesn't, like, that's not the intent of what you're doing. You're trying to identify the system change and the future state in a non-emotional way so that you can then dig into how might we
Mm,
get there.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like for me, a lot of the commas initially were about like the deservedness of me to have what other people don't. And that's not a new series of commas. Um, and I don't know, I'd love to read this if I could. This feels like a good moment
Sure.
to read this. So here's the book, Waking Up: How I Grew to Love My Body and Myself While Solo Hiking Across Northern England. Uh, and this is from I decided not to read the like tool periods, not commas, but instead to read this piece that I wrote after I got home from England, and I'd done this hike, and I was um, sort of remaining the person I had changed into, and also having a lot of patience, I think, with myself and those around me because they didn't know this me. So, this says it's called No Room for Commas. And previously in the chapter before, I had shared that like I realized that I didn't need support anymore, that like I was really feeling okay or good inside, and that was a new feeling. One more thing that I understand when I realize I'm good in here, it's made me a better coach. Here's why. Being good in here means doing a good job showing up for myself, which leads to a deeper level of care for myself, which leads to a deeper level of support for others. So when I'm working with someone, being curious, not judgmental, as they understand themselves better, witnessing and celebrating as they create what they'd like in their lives, it's an honor and a joy. I feel the profound goodness of it in my bones. But that's not where this ends. I'm a better community member now, too. I bring compassion and love and nothing else, no negative feelings, not just for myself or the people in my world, but for every human being, period. There's no room for commas here. Even if a former me would have said that some person didn't deserve my love and compassion, this one says, imagine if someone who isn't politically aligned, who's harmed others or disparages someone or something I care about, felt safe and loved. When I feel safe and loved, I do better for others, probably the same for them. I see now everyone is worthy of love and compassion, no exceptions, and we all do better when we feel it. Period. There's something here about, and we don't have to go down any rabbit hole that we don't want to. For me, there's something here about everyone includes everyone. And it's not that everyone includes everyone, period, I think. How do you, what, yeah.
Good catch. Every rabbit hole starts with a comma. So.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. 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 If that is your stance, then everyone means everyone, period.
Mm-hmm.
And it means funny, the visual that comes up was a trip to Europe a couple of years ago when we were staying in Slovenia at a friend's place and decided to go for breakfast in Italy. And we're just driving along, and I think it was like an hour and a half drive to get to sort of the city in Italy. And driving along, and without realizing it, like all the street signs all of a sudden were in a different language. It was like we'd gone from Slovenia to Italy without realizing that we had changed countries because the European Union, they've gotten rid of those boundaries.
Wow.
Not the boundaries are still there on a map, but the enforcement of the boundaries have been taken away.
Mm.
And it was a really interesting feeling to just sense that you've gone from something that in the past would have felt like this container and that you had to then have permission to go to the next container beside it. Now you were just free to literally go from Slovenia to Italy to Austria to, and to move around into these different cultures, these different languages, different food. And it was a very strange feeling at first, but it was a very good feeling. Like it was a feeling that felt like, oh wow, like people are welcome to move around here.
Mm.
People are welcome to experience the different cultures and the different kinds of people. And yeah, that was sort of the visual that came up as you were describing this world that you would imagine.
Mm. Imagine or feel. I think feel. I live in this world.
Mhm. It's great. Yeah, it's a great way to experience life if you can, as you come upon people, that's the feeling you're bringing to your interaction with them as your default.
Mm. Yeah. It feels like well, I love that story. I think so much of what feels good initially feels a little strange.
Sure. Yeah, we're rewiring our expectations. Yeah, like I'm imagining as you interact with people from that energy is just that, not the curiosity is the only, like this curiosity about the other human being. Not, as I said, like it was interesting watching this conversation with our friend from Sudan, because there was curiosity, but some of it was tinged with like I don't know, a different kind of energy. Like it was almost like confirming that it was the right thing that he and his family had come to our country.
Mm.
Right? Like there's a little bit of that tinged in, coupled with mainly curiosity, and then coupled with complete acceptance. And it was a generational thing, clearly, as the conversation unfolded. And I was, as I often do, didn't say much and just sat back and observed.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could have, there can be a lot of commas in a conversation like that. Yeah.
Mm.
So um,
Yeah, it reminds me of a couple years ago. Um, I think I used to feel, again, strange melding into good, right? I used to feel concerned that I would offend someone whose pronouns I didn't understand. And I had some really great role modeling at this alternative high school that I used to, for a year I did a program with the kids, with the students, called Practical Intuition. And so I was at the school all the time, right? And um, they were very kind in how, well, I watched the people there be very kind in greeting someone. And there was a simple, I mean, it's a question mark, but it's basically a period. The question would be, what are your pronouns? And it would be asked in this beautiful way. And the person who received that question could share from their heart about what their pronouns were. And there's one kid, a young man who's now in college, who I've really had the great good fortune to become close with. And when I first met him, it was I was very concerned about offending him by using a pronoun he didn't want to be used. And so I felt safe to say, um, what are your pronouns? And what he said was, anything except she are my pronouns. And I was like, I love that. And I was able to say thank you and kind of express the concern that I'd had about, and what makes me think of it is this is very generational, right? Like young people, at least in my part of the world, are very comfortable expressing, receiving, living in different versions of themselves than I was raised with. And so I was so afraid of offending. Um, and this young man and then, you know, everybody else in that environment just were so loving when someone made a mistake or would make a mistake. And it took a lot of the commas out of it or out of what was going on in my head, and to just be able to say, oh, okay.
Mhm.
You know.
Mhm. Yeah, well, like we said off the top, this simple notion applies in everything.
Mhm.
You know, and for those watching, I think that's really the invitation, is to go and just sit with this idea of like, where are all the commas in my experience of life, and
Mhm.
are they really serving me? Like, could the same event just have happened and I could observe it with a period on the end of it and then allow myself to move on past that, is an invitation that most people don't really consider. At
Mhm.
least that's been my experience. So yeah, I mean, it's even the whole notion, and again, not a rabbit hole to go down, but the notion of the need for uh, these descriptors of ourselves, right, in terms of pronouns and like all of this, is like, it would be better to live in a world as you've described, where it's just, there's a natural curiosity to, you know, who are you? Tell me about yourself,
Mhm.
right? Where it doesn't need this descriptor attached to everybody to define ourselves, you know, in a way, right? But you know, that's a bridge, that's a long bridge to get to that point of acceptance and curiosity without judgment. But you know, I applaud that as the direction that would create a world that has a lot less of the kind of behavior that you've witnessed through your friend or family member that can be very troubling, understandably.
Mhm.
You know, we have a mutual friend who lives in Los Angeles who went through this, right? Just
Mhm.
basically afraid to leave their house, even though, you know, they're both US citizens. They might be mistaken as from somewhere else, which most people are from somewhere else. We go back far enough. But you can't you can't ignore that there is events going on around you. You can be aware of them, and then it's the question of, how do you decide to interact with those events?
Mhm.
And so I think that's an important nuance to this, is this is not like sticking your head in the sand and just saying, well, you know, you had a family member have an experience. Yes. I I actually witnessed you over the last, it's probably been 2 weeks now.
Couple weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, because you've raised it sort of repeatedly in those 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So I could tell there were some commas
Mhm.
because you know, the event happened, but it was continually creating a sense of suffering or anxiety or something. So there was definitely some commas sneaking in. I remember when your son's car caught on fire,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing, right? Like, and so it's interesting because this is another one of the tools that points us to where we still have some opportunity for growth, because events will happen that show us where there's a trigger or something that is quick to respond. And
Mhm.
obviously family and loved ones in harm's way is a natural one, but it doesn't require commas. It's just where we probably find a lot of commas hanging out. Is, you know, in certain areas of our life where we can we can go through our day and have other events happen, and we can witness them, and they could be, we could drive by a car accident where there's an ambulance and witness it and have a moment of empathy, but like as we drive away, that's it. Our day continues, right? So I think that's why the reflective part of this tool is a really important one, because it does help us uncover where some of the opportunities for growth still lie.
Yeah. You had mentioned that when we were talking about negative opportunities being negative thoughts being opportunities for growth, and you had said something that I was curious about, and this feels like a great place to ask this question. You had said, well, they're so similar, these tools. And I was like, they are?
I wondered if you were going to come back on that. Yeah. And I think I just kind of explained why, is that once we start reflecting on where we add a lot of commas in our life, what we're really recognizing is where there are some warning signals, where some of those, most of the commas are followed by things that are not terribly helpful, right? So to me, the commas and the areas we add commas are just another warning light of where we're engaging with negative or unhelpful thought that takes an event and then adds. I mean, all of these tools are based on the same foundation of, our thoughts are not who we are, right? But our thoughts are also things that if we amplify them, we go back to the amplifier, or if we add commas to them, or if we engage with them and allow them to linger, that none of that is helpful. None of that gets us to that state of the midline that we talked about, where the events happen and then we come back to a state, like a neutral state. Good events happen, we come back to a neutral state. Challenging events happen, we come back. And that learning, I've talked about it like a tennis player, that learning to not linger in the shot you've just hit too long, because the longer you linger in it, the longer it will take you to get back to the midline to deal with the next thing that's about to come. That's just the reality of what the human experience is, that those shots are going to keep coming. They don't necessarily have any positive or negative, attachment to them until we add something. Even the most difficult, like even seeing getting a call that my son's car is on fire, but I'm okay, could have a period at the end of it.
And sorry,
no, and that's not a judgment. That's just like saying, like, there are events that will be really near and dear to all of us, that when they happen, the event itself has a period on the end. We're going to add to it. Let's do it with some intention and some awareness of what we want to add. And is this adding something that's going to take care of ourselves and actually have a meaningful influence on the event itself? Right. And that's sort of that living in a mindful state of not, the commas are just where we react and respond, almost like in automatic. A period followed by another sentence that is intentional is one where we're actually living in a mindful and aware state.
It's as you've been speaking, I've been remembering the feelings and events of that morning. So over the summer, got a call that our then 20-year-old was on the side of the road in a busy rush hour part of the world. Our 10-year-old Subaru had caught fire, and he had gotten himself to the side of the road, and he'd had assistance and support, and he was okay, and period. And now it was time to figure out what to do, right? He needed to get from where he was to somewhere else.
Mhm.
And I have this, it's really interesting to just put myself back in that moment, because I remember both experiencing an absolute weight, like, okay, we get off the phone with him, we're ready to my husband and I are ready to get in the car and go. And all of a sudden I just felt this wave of feeling, of emotion. And I just was standing there like, like, oh my God, this happened. And to be able to witness all of that and take the steps that really did require understanding what is a period and what comes after a comma, and really being able to be okay with the messiness of it and continue putting a period and having an intention, and putting a period and having an intention, sort of moving forward. Um, and then, so the other way that it comes up for me is, I think that points to sort of fear or overwhelm stopping us. Like, and the commas are the things that show up, you know? Um, and then so I'm remembering something kind of funny that happened when I was in high school, that this same child, who was not, he didn't have a traditional schooling at all. So he's always felt, I think, a lot more agency than I felt. He didn't have the rules that were imposed upon me in an American school system, that uh he didn't have that at all, basically. So so when I was I guess I was probably 17. Um, I was one of the varsity field hockey team members, and I was friends with. There were a bunch of us seniors who were um, just loved field hockey so much and played it with all of our hearts. And one of our member was the goalie, who was at our next game was going to be having a scout come and witness, and to decide, did they want to. So we're all intending to play, go to practice, play games, whatever. And this one Tuesday night, we decided to go sleep out for concert tickets. So did you ever sleep out, Andrew, for concert tickets, or do you know what that means?
I know what it means. I don't think I ever got up. Went the night before to sleep over. I think I got up very early in the morning a couple of times, but yeah.
So we took sleeping bags, and we went to there was this store called Strawberries on Route 9. And what you would do is you'd be the first in line, right, to get to the cash register first to get your tickets for, in this case, the Steve Miller concert. And we had a ball. It was a Tuesday night. There was no traffic, right? So Route 9 is a huge road, and even was then, it's like a 6-lane highway, basically. And I didn't do this, but members of this group were like rolling across Route 9. It was very silly and fun. And we got our concert tickets, and the next day, I remember that it was a Tuesday because the next day was a half day. Wednesdays were often half days for whatever reason in my senior year of high school. And so all of us, and I remember particularly for me, my mom had given me permission to not go to school the next day. Like, we were going to sleep out. When the store opened, we would be there. Then we would get home and not have to go to school. And we all showed up for field hockey practice that afternoon. And there was a teacher who had observed us not in school and then observed us at practice, who told the field hockey coach, "Oh, there's a rule that you can't go to practice. You have to miss, I don't know, an amount of days if you don't go to school and then you go to practice." And that was what period, right? So that's what happened. The scout came, and the young woman who they were there for couldn't see them because we were all benched. And I shared that story. I remember it as quite a funny story. And I shared it with my son, and he was horrified. He was like, "What? Like, what a stupid rule." I think the idea that for me, it does have a period on it. And to see those commas and have them be related to like the absurdity, like the sort of, he was relating it to, there's a book called Waiting for Godot, or Waiting for Godot. It's a play. it's just about existentialism. No. Oh shoot, I'm not remembering. But in World War II, there were these, or after the World Wars, there was a lot of literature that came out of Europe that was really based on like, you don't have any control. No one has any control. It's all awful. And that was how he was receiving this funny story from my childhood.
Yeah. Adding lots of commas. Yeah.
Adding lots of commas. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know why that came up just then, but these are tools that are so fascinating to think about how they show up for us, how they show up for others, you know?
I do. Yeah. I notice it all the time. Notice it on myself, notice it on family, notice it on, clients. It's, well, what, I kind of alluded to this, like the foundation of everything we've talked about in this entire series is common, right? It is sort of a foundational piece to what our human experience is. And sometimes just describing tools in slightly different ways and with different applications or different reflections is really helpful for people to see something that really works for them. So it's not, for anybody that's followed along, like it's not like not necessary that you try to adopt all the tools in your life. It's actually more that you explore what, pick a couple that feel relevant or feel accessible, and then see what comes up, see what you learn about yourself, and go down that path and see what you can unlock by having a different relationship with thought and with your experience and with the events that are going on around you. Because, as we said before we started recording, like the events are going to keep on happening. And, the better we have access to a couple of tools to help us separate ourselves from those events and our experience of them, the more peaceful life we can live.
We are inviting you, listening and watching, to be present at I'm even thinking of it as kind of a celebration of these tools. And I'm curious, Andrew, because I want our friends who are watching and listening to not feel like they have to have come prepared with some kind of homework to be in that room, right? So I don't know, what's the gentlest invitation we can craft if you want to be there? How might we invite?
Yeah, I really think that our final session, it can be anything from an introduction to the tool, if that's where somebody's at the moment they find out about this event, or it can be a sharing of maybe how one of the tools has been helpful, or what somebody has learned and experienced in playing with the tools that they've been part of, right? This is not a mastery thing. It's not a mastery thing for me or for you or for any of the sources of this content. This is really just a sharing of things that have been helpful. And so, yeah, I would love for it to just be kind of I would imagine that we'll do a quick review of what each of the tools was, and to see what people's curiosity is, where it lands, and what people have, if people have done anything with it, what their experience has been, and if not, what clarifications we can provide or guidance to get them on the path.
Yeah.
And
That sounds
definitely no
amazing.
homework involved. Yeah.
No, yeah, I know sometimes people will take an invitation and be a little nervous about it because they're not sure what's going to be expected of them. And I think what we're saying here is there's no expectations. Just if you want to be in the room, just be in the room. Be
Yeah.
there to listen, be there to soak it up.
Sometimes the most powerful thing can be in a room with other humans and realize that everybody's having their experience of life much like you are, right? Uneven, testing at times, amazing at times, and just being around other people and being open to sharing that and hearing that from each other can be the most powerful thing.
Mhm. Yeah, love it. Well, is there anything that you're thinking of that you'd like to kind of leave us with as we wrap up periods, not commas?
But only just an invitation similar to the one that I referenced at the start with when I first learned about this, is to kind of like process the difference between something with a period on the end and something that has commas and continues on, and take that and then notice in your own day that how things show up and how you process them and how you reflect on them and how many commas get added versus periods where you just observe and choose very intentionally what comes next. It's the beauty of a period is that you get to choose the next line without it referring necessarily to the previous one. Or a comma, you're sort of, the rule is you kind of have to keep expanding on it.
Yeah.
This is my grammatical expertise being exposed here, but that's my understanding of the difference between a period and a comma. But to me, that's my experience of what it feels like, is like putting a period in something is like, wow, that happened. And now I choose what comes next versus that happened. And I can't believe that person did that. Or why on earth is this happening to me? Or blah, 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 blah. We've all done it.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's the invitation, is to go and notice. You don't need to do anything with it. I think the first activity on all the tools is just an awareness of how it shows up in your own life without trying to fix anything. Just awareness alone is the solution to most of this. You'll catch yourself and you'll choose to feel better for your own sake. And you'll notice that when you don't add commas, you will feel better. You will feel less involved in the event, and you'll feel more in control of how you respond to it. So, yeah, just go and notice.
That's the whole ball game, I feel like. Such fun. What you were just saying reminded me of, I think it's Byron Katie, who's a wonderful coach, who has said something like, my favorite thing about the past is that it's over. And putting a period on something feels like that too. Not in a push away way or a resistance way, but in a just a like, ah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's true. When we notice something and can put a period on it, it means it is behind us, even if there's still something to do next that relates to it. The event is not retrievable.
Mm.
It's what we do next that matters. It's similar. We didn't have this as a tool, but I had this conversation with one of my daughters who was having a hard time making a decision. And I heard this line in a podcast. Is a researcher had done this amazing research with university students, where she had a group faced with a decision, two options. She had them play a game of chance to decide, and they did this for a whole academic year. So they had to play this. I think it was a dice game. Depending on it was even or odd, they choose A or B.
Hmm.
And that's how they made all the decisions for an entire year. And then they recorded the outcomes. Would you judge this as the right decision or not? And then they had a separate control group that did positive, negatives, like really analyzed, there was no difference.
Mm.
Right. And her point was, we don't know what's going to happen in the moment after we make the decision. We assume we do. We make up a story that we do, but you're better off focusing on making your decisions right than making the right decision.
Mm.
Making your decisions right is being intentional about what you do after the decision.
Mm. Mm. Wow. Decisions and events. It's so interesting too, because that young woman who had to be benched while the scout was there, went on to have a very full, very awesome field hockey career in college. And like to that was the event that happened. And then what came after it was not a decision on her part to stop.
Correct.
Right? Like that, I think that I'm really glad that you kind of brought us here, because commas can be so disempowering because they can stop us from moving forward or feeling like we can move forward. And the reality is that events keep unfolding and that decisions keep being made. Um, and when we have this, the whole ball game of awareness, we can also see that this is one moment in a life of moments. And you can only, somebody said this, I read this recently. I read it in your, that you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't
Steve
connect the
Jobs.
dots. Yes. Yeah. Which really brings me to where I would love to kind of wrap up on. And that is a celebration of you, because you have done something amazing. You've written an amount of your book. You've been sharing it out in LinkedIn, the book about your experience going around the world. And what I really loved about the last chapter was that you talked about loops at, like, loops close and then new loops open. But if you have the old loops open, you don't get the new loops. You're sort of stuck, right? Like, so congratulations, first of all. That is a huge accomplishment to have, drafted a book.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun experience. Once I made the decision, I made the decision right by how I approached it. I think I had ruminated on writing a book, or a lot of external suggestions to write a book had been coming. And, it was very easy. I added lots of commas to that by imagining the work involved and, what else I'd have to not be doing in order to be able to focus. Do I need to go rent a cabin in the woods? So many commas. And then one day I was just like, well, maybe I just write what comes to, like, what's on my mind in a sequential fashion from my perspective. I'll write what feels there right now, and see if that momentum, carries me through all the way around the world. And then I'll go back and add some color to it if necessary later. And just that was how I made the decision to write the book. Right. Was choosing an approach that felt accessible and fun and exciting. And it proved that way every week. I didn't miss a week. And just, I never knew when the inspiration, because I literally wrote it in the 6 or 7 days between publishing for anybody that thought that it was all done before, definitely not. But that was fun because I also gave myself permission to just write when I felt inspired and when the story was there to be written. So yeah, it feels good to have the first part done, and I'll go back, and you've obviously been a big part of that by helping me record my experience along the way in the podcast we did. So thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, the book and the closing of loops is a big part of sort of noticing where there was still lots of thought and lots of open-ended questions that were not really serving, like they were causing a lot of noise that what I wasn't, that I chose to move past.
Mm.
And that meant putting a close to those loops. And now, as soon as the noise quietened down, all kinds of new stuff opened up. And so it's exciting.
The podcast is called Where in the World is Andrew Moss? You can find it in your favorite podcatcher. I will link to the playlist in YouTube in these notes. And I think the other thing that I was remembering as you were speaking was there were times in the drafting of this book where you were, I think we were witnessing your peers were witnessing some commas, and just the patience with which you saw them and
Mhm.
kept on kept on going, like that idea of making the decision right because you'd committed to this, and even with all the noise or frustrations that you encountered occasionally, it didn't you didn't talk yourself out of doing it. You were like, no, that's what I wanted to do. I'm going
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you, that's why awareness is the key, because when you notice the commas, it's a lot easier to then erase that, put a period and move on, almost in real time or in near time,
Mhm.
and not get stuck in these spirals that we can get stuck in sometimes. So yeah, I know, I noticed, and I figured other people were noticing too, that there were moments, but as there will be for everybody that tries this, is not a, it's what I said earlier, it's not mastery, it's not perfection, it's just having awareness and a little bit more intention in your life makes a massive difference once you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Here. Well said. Well, thank you. I feel like I want a bell to ring or something. We did
Well, we
it.
have one more conversation, but
We do.
yes, we
We have
did.
one more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to that one I know you are. If you want to be part of that conversation, klockculp.com/contact. I'll put the link in the show notes. Um, thank you for all these. I'm excited to complete the loop on this one and see what's ahead.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kay.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great talking, Andrew.